Proof Donald Trump is the infamous satanic magician Aleister Crowley. Now, most rational thinking people will find that statement too absurd to listen to because that doesn't happen in reality, right? But what if there's a secret wisdom? A wisdom that you didn't know about, because there is. There is a world around us that most people are oblivious to, completely unaware of that it exists. A world of black magic. Is magic real? Here is a magician on America's Got Talent. What he does is he makes CDs appear out of thin air and disappear. Appear and disappear. Watch CD there, just disappears. Just pop and it's gone. Now, of course, I do know that there is magic. There's camera tricks for magic. There's also film editing, and the whole audience could be staged. I do get that. However, I'm going to show you the same phenomenon where the magician is making this appear and disappear happen in an NFL football game that happened back in 2016 between the Washington Redskins and the Cleveland Browns. Aleister Crowley says in his books that Solomonic magic, otherwise known as black magic, you can make things appear out of thin air. What you do is you alter nature through this. And I'm going to go into on how the magician does it a little bit deeper, but it comes with breathing. They have to know the name of the entity. They breathe in as they speak, or they'll have a matrix point on them that allows magic to happen for them. Now, here we go. We're going to go on to the game here. And there is the running back right in the middle behind number 11. You see the ball come out there by his foot. I'm going to take you through this play one more time, and I'll have a video link to the end of this. It's one play. I break it down for 10 minutes, and you see it's crazy what happens over the 10 minutes. But watch number 29. He's running with the ball. The ball will go behind one of the players' backs here, and then you see it coming forward and pop out. Look, here it is. There it is. You see the ball? There's the ball. There's the ball. Then watch this. Watch what happens. Boop. It disappears, just like those CDs did. And Aleister Crowley claims that it's called Solomonic magic, black magic, and here's it right up here. You can look at. I'm going to tell you what I know about Aleister Crowley, and I know Aleister Crowley from reading his books. I have seen too much rubbish in regards to Crowley videos on YouTube. I don't know where they get their information from, but it's a bunch of nonsense. I'll show you the truth. I'm not sure if these people make up the information themselves or what the case may be, but it's evident that they are completely oblivious to the secret wisdom. Aleister Crowley's life and accomplishments far exceed what any of these videos or people say in these videos. And here are some of Crowley's general accomplishments that you know before I get into the deeper stuff. He was a student at Cambridge University, and while he was there, he interpreted the first 13 chapters of Robert Charles's Ethiopian version of the Book of Enoch. The book was interpreted from ancient scrolls of a language that no longer exists. It's extinct. Crowley was said to speak between 26 to 32 languages. However, in his books, he speaks about magical spells being performed in ancient languages being more powerful. The spell is more powerful by the language it is spoken in. Crowley says that Latin is a very magical language, but more powerful than Latin is ancient Greek. The most powerful in ritual performed is ancient Egyptian. So he still spoke these ancient languages, and in ritual, these occult leaders speak these languages. I believe that Crowley spoke more than just 32 languages. I believe that he spoke every language that ever existed on Earth. Crowley in his books would mock his skeptics by saying that they didn't see the genius in him. They didn't see the genius in his writings. Aleister Crowley drew self-portraits of himself And when he did, always as an alien or a demon or an extraordinary intelligence. And I tell you this, yes, that's what he is or was. Now, if you know about the 007 character, James Bond, where he came from is a writer by the name of Ian Fleming. Ian Fleming was a British Secret Service agent during World War II. Fleming said that he created the James Bond character based on his missions with Aleister Crowley. In Wikipedia claims that this never happened. They say that Aleister Crowley applied for the Secret Service but was denied because he was a drug addict. However, Ian Fleming says that the character 007 James Bond is Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley was a mountaineer. He attempted to climb two mountains, Mount Kanchenjunga in Nepal between China and India, and the K2 mountain at the Pakistan and China border. The K2 mountain is the world's deadliest death rate for mountaineers. Now, neither mountain did Crowley make it to the top, although for their day, 1903 to 1907, his party accomplished an astonishing feat. The K2 was not climbed until 1954. The mountain's almost straight up rock. The amazing thing about the mountain climbing comes from Crowley's book of Thoth. Crowley says that the great religious leaders of our history, naming Jesus, Buddha, and the Prophet Muhammad, he says that they all had an enlightening period. He says that Muhammad was born poor but died rich. Buddha was born rich but died poor. He said with Jesus, there's no recorded history of him between the age of 12 to 30. Crowley says that these prophets faced an enlightening period, and Crowley's came out of the mountains. He wrote many books during the mountain climbing years. In 1904, Aleister Crowley got married and went on his honeymoon to Cairo, Egypt. While on his honeymoon, he said that an entity possessed his wife. The entity taught him the Aeon of Horus, and Crowley wrote the Book of Law. Crowley says there was the Aeon of Horus, the dying god, the Aeon of Osiris, the dying god, then the Aeon of Isis, that is the liberation and nourishment, and the final Aeon is the Aeon of Horus. And this is the basis of the religion, Thelema 93. Now on to Boco do Inferno in Portugal. The English translation to that is Hell's Mouth in English. In 1930, Aleister Crowley faked his death at Boco do Inferno. I have seen many articles on the event, however, they are all written in Portuguese and I don't understand the language. However, I know the event had to be astonishing because the country put up a dedication plaque to the event. There you see Crowley's name in English and the event wrote about in Portuguese. If you ever see the waves and just the way that the water rips around, it's definitely a very violent ocean there. Well, on to Sir Aleister Crowley. He's the 73rd greatest Brit of all time, according to a 2002 poll. Now, the names that are on this list go with William Shakespeare, Sir Isaac Newton, John Lennon of the Beatles, Sir Paul McCartney, George Harrison. Sir Aleister Crowley, the Sir in front of the name indicates that he was knighted by royalty. Crowley was born a Brit and died a Brit and traveled throughout the world. He was in China, Nepal, India, Egypt, throughout Europe. He lived in the United States during the First World War in New York City. He lived in Russia during the rise of Joseph Stalin into power. He lived in Italy during the rise of Mussolini into power. He was said to be kicked out of Italy in 1925 and he moved to Germany for the rise of Adolf Hitler. During the time in Germany, he is believed to have started the sex occult that is throughout the world today called the OTO, Ordo Templi Orientis. They are in your neighborhood today. What Crowley called himself was a Kabbalah instructor. The Kabbalah is the book of the Jews. If you are not a Jew, your eyes will never view this book. Crowley called himself the world's wickedest man and the great prophet of our generation. He is known as a ceremonial magician and Satanist. When Crowley was in New York around 1915, Crowley was interviewed by a New York Times reporter. The reporter told Crowley that he didn't believe in magic. Crowley pointed at a man a block away and said, "Watch him." Crowley waved his hand. The man a block away fell to the ground. The reporter was blown away by what he saw and wrote about the event in his article. Aleister Crowley's name appeared in the New York Times countless times, usually being mentioned by celebrities like Marlon Brando, David Bowie, and others. First, I'll tell you about how I learned about Aleister Crowley. First I heard of him was from the song Mr. Crowley by Ozzy Osbourne. I was told by the older kids in the neighborhood that he was a Satanist. I never really heard too much until I began my studies for God. I was reading and trying to understand the Bible, and every time I became troubled by what I was reading and needed an answer, I would Google search, see if someone had the answer. And often the only name that would offer an answer would be Aleister Crowley. At first, I was appalled. I thought, great prophet, not mine, not a Satanist. But the more I learned, the more I believed in what he was saying. I read the Bible, the Quran, and then Crowley's Book of Magic and Theory and Practice. His book helped make things very clear for my understanding. In the Egyptian mythology, Egyptian Book of the Dead, Annie is the scribe. What does that mean? Annie is short for Anubis, and Anubis is Satan. And in the New Testament, Jesus says that scribes are teachers of the law. Crowley would tell people that he could be called Little Sunshine. And what that means is to the black sun. Crowley is referring to himself as Satan by that statement. So, to summarize what I'm saying, our enemy is our instructor of the law. As warped as that may sound, ever wonder why the Bible is so difficult to understand? That is why. Thelema 93, Sorcery and Witchcraft. Here is where the video is going to get extraordinary. In Sicily in 1923, Crowley performed a ritual in his house named the Abbey House. The ritual was called the Abraham Melon Ceremony. On his house, he had a doorway or a window pointed towards the northern sky that was always open. The ritual took 6 months to perform, and at the end of the ritual, it was said that he was to align with his guardian angel, and the 13 entities that oversee hell would be at one with him. In 1925, Crowley was supposedly ordered to leave Italy, and in that same year, Crowley began to call himself the Great Beast. He went to Germany and started the Ordo Templi Orientis, OTO, and was there for the rise of Adolf Hitler. Through the black magic practice Union of Rose and Cross, Crowley says a magician can live multiple lives at the same time and be in multiple places at the same time. Crowley calls these lives the egos of a magician. Now, I offer an IT analogy to help you understand information technology. With a computer network, you have a master computer, and the rest are slaves. And so is the master magician as he controls the other lives, if you can understand that. Here is an image of Paul McCartney next to Aleister Crowley. Notice how they look very much alike. Are you witnessing the union of Rose and Cross? Or excuse me, Cross and Rose? Notice on Crowley's attire, he's wearing a cross. Why would a Satanist wear a cross? Crowley is dressed in a ritual attire from the Order of the Golden Dawn. What is that? The Order of the Golden Dawn is a Luciferian occult, excuse me. Luciferian occult. The cross represents Sagittarius of the zodiac, and the zodiac is Lucifer. You can learn this by studying Job 38:32 across all Bibles, that the zodiac is Lucifer, and the cross is part of the zodiac. And learn what the Church of Jesus Christ is. Study Romans 16. The church serves not Jesus, but their own bellies. All the names in Romans 16 can be traced back to Lucifer. I wrote an article on this some years ago, and it's something that you should study if you decide to put a cross around your neck or go into one of these churches. The cross means the opposite of what we are taught, and taught is another name for hell in the Book of the Dead. T-A-U-T. So what? Aleister Crowley looks like Paul McCartney. Well, it goes much deeper than that. It was 20 years ago today that Sgt. Pepper told the band to play. It was rumored that the Beatles recorded Sgt. Pepper's 20 years to the day of the death of Aleister Crowley. What is documented is Crowley died the 1st of January 1947, and the Beatles recorded it on the 5th of 1967. However, I saw a compelling video some years ago that claimed otherwise, claiming it was 20 years to the death, that it was a ceremonial ritual that was performed while recording the song. Aleister Crowley performed the Abram Mellon ceremony inside the Abbey house. The Beatles have the album Abbey Road. In Abbey Road, it's filled with conspiracies with the death of Paul McCartney, dying on September 11th, 1966. Paul had no shoes on, stating that he was a dead man, and there's all types of conspiracies on the Abbey Road cover. They're claiming that Paul McCartney was replaced by a fake Paul, or Fall, as they openly called him. Paul then wanted Aleister Crowley's image on the cover of Sgt. Pepper's album cover, and that album too continued with the conspiracies of his death, with the base being laid out and half images on the picture. Now, is the Union of Cross and Rose of Thelema 93? Is this an example of a magician living multiple lives? Here is this next image of Neil Peart of Rush and a picture of Aleister Crowley wearing the elite 33rd degree Mason outfit. Notice they look very much alike. Notice Neil Peart is wearing on his shirt the Black Sun, with the inside being the double cross of Lorraine. That's where the term "you've been double crossed" comes from. If you read the lyrics from Rush, their music, and then read the books of Aleister Crowley, you know for sure that Neil Peart was at least a reader of Crowley's books, but it goes deeper than that. Here is the logo of the Ordo Templi Orientis, the OTO, Aleister Crowley's sex occult. 4 beasts, the black sun, the crescent moon. But I want you to notice the snake biting its tail around the logo, and notice the arrow through the snake in the middle. And this is the kick drum from the Snakes and Arrows tour for Rush, for their drummer Neil Peart. Does the two images look similar to you? Well, next, here is Aleister Crowley as a schoolboy next to the guitarist Angus Young from AC/DC. Notice the outfit, the facial features, the cheekbones, the chin. They are identical. When I was a child, I was told from an older kid in the neighborhood that AC/DC stands for Aleister Crowley's Devil's Child. I rejected this notion because AC/DC was my favorite band. But today, I would have to say that I do agree with that. Now, I have shown 3 examples of egos all in music. Do I believe Crowley's only in music? No, I don't. But the importance of music is astronomical because, as the ancient Greek scholars tell us, music is the language of the gods. There was a Greek philosopher that was studied by both Plato's and Socrates. His name escapes me, but his followers were called the Mathematici. I know he and his followers were hunted and killed for his beliefs and his teachings. And again, his teachings were studied by Plato and Socrates. He said that the symbols that you see every day have a deeper meaning. You drive past a grocery store and you see their logo. And yes, it identifies the store, but it has a different purpose. The logo is made in a mathematical sequence that aligns with the stars. He says that the logo's mathematical sequence makes a musical note that draws powers of the entity. This is the reason for the compass on the Freemasons logo, and it's black magic. Numerology is the placement of the stars and the number sequence. In 1970, about 1970, in the music industry, there was a man by the name of John Todd, and he exposed the music industry, and he came right out and said that he's a druid. And I'm going to tell you, once a druid, you're always a druid. Once you go there, there's no coming back. But I wouldn't recommend listening to him in regards to religion. However, if you do listen to him about the music industry, I believe that what he is saying is dead on.
My fingernails grow on my fingers, and my fingers are fixed firmly to my hand. It is my hand that terminates my arm, and that's fixed to my shoulder like a charm. My shoulder is a portion of my trunk.
Your involvement in the Golden Dawn?
Oh, my involvement in the Golden Dawn is in so much as I was very interested actually in Eastern and Western mysticism, and I spent time reading and researching when I was younger. Yeah, I guess that's it. That's there were some very eminent characters in the Golden Dawn, and I found it very interesting to see the history of those that had been in it, and this sort of esoteric movement, and also sort of what went on, the offshoots of it, of that sort of love of all things mystical and magical, all things bright and beautiful, really.
Do you think that's why people did that thing when they played Stairway to Heaven backwards and said that you were talking about Satan?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm going to go straight back to the Beatles here, because there was a time when somebody wrote a thesis about Paul McCartney being dead, and Paul is dead. And if you played back the records, I'm very serious, it's crazy, but if you played back the records, there was something which said Paul is dead. And so then they started to play back all manner of records, and of course we were going to be main candidates for it. And somebody said, oh, it says My Sweet Satan in it. And I thought, oh gosh, it's hard enough writing the music one way round rather than that way.
notice the hair, the waves in the hair, and the pictures and the facial features and these eyes. They all look the same. Well, Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin purchased Crowley's mansion, the Boleskine House. It was a manor on the southeast of Loch Ness in the Scottish Highlands. When Page purchased the house, its condition was said to be in terrible shape. It's a strange endeavor for a millionaire at the height of his popularity. Jimmy Page also purchased Aleister Crowley's ceremonial cape and other personal assets of Crowley. Led Zeppelin had 3 tours after Page purchased the Boleskine House, and each tour ended prematurely. The first ended due to John Paul Jones, the bassist, breaking his finger. The second ended with the singer's Robert Plant, his son, died. And the third ended with the death of John Bonham, the drummer of the band. The Boleskine House burnt to the ground in 2015, appropriately because it was built on an old church ground where the whole congregation was trapped inside when the church burnt to the ground. The whole congregation was burnt to death in the Great Fire. Crowley purchased this house. There were 2 individuals that owned it before that, so they rebuilt a house on these grounds. Now, Led Zeppelin's drummer John Bonham is believed to have died in the house, rumored to have died in the house, and other celebrities are rumored to have died there as well. According to what I've read, the locals all stayed far away from this house due to the strange happenings. In Led Zeppelin's book, Hammer of the Gods, Jimmy Page gives praise to Aleister Crowley and Black Magic. The Led Zeppelin members also say they sold their souls in this book, all except for the bassist John Paul Jones. He didn't. But the other 3 members did, Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, and John Bonham. Okay, and in this book, Jimmy Page boasts about this symbol. It's called the Zoso symbol. The Zoso symbol, he says, is equivalent to 666. Now, the Zoso symbol is an example of numerology and symbolism. It is both a name and a symbol. To a magician, this means great power. Another story about Jimmy Page involves a band called Eddie and the Hot Rods. Eddie and the Hot Rods were an up-and-coming band from London, England, until they posted an album cover at the height of their popularity. And the album cover was with Aleister Crowley with Mickey Mouse ears. Eddie and the Hot Rods toured the United States with the Talking Heads and the Ramones. The Ramones in 1976 and the Talking Heads in 1977. In late 1977, they released this album called Do Anything You Want to Do, a spin-off of Crowley's Do What Thou Wilt, that shall be the whole of the law. Well, the story goes Jimmy Page saw the album cover and became very angry, and the band Eddie and the Hot Rods believes that Page cursed them. Eddie and the Hot Rods said weird things began to happen to them on the tour, and they blamed Page. The band started in 1975. A year later, they toured the United States in 1976, but by 1979, their label dropped them, and nobody else would sign them. In 1981, the band broke up, and the record's cover image, Crowley with the Mickey Mouse ears, is the blame. Jimmy Page ended their careers. It goes on. Hollywood released Eddie and the Cruisers as a spin-off to Eddie and the Hot Rods, a band that was great but fell apart due to darkness. Back to Donald Trump. Donald Trump and his podium movements when giving speeches. I watched Trump's movements and noticed that he was repeating the same action during one of his speeches. And what I mean, for example, is like he would make a gesture with his hand, then he would knock twice on the podium, then slap the side of the podium. And he kept repeating this movement throughout his speech. And as you see these images here, these are Aleister Crowley's books of high priest performing yoga, magical yoga. Okay, and each one he's letting off, he's evoking spirits at this point. You see, and you'll notice that Aleister Crowley in his those images, and then you see Donald Trump making the same images. And here's an image of both Adolf Hitler and Donald Trump making that same triangle that a black priest was making. And you see the same thing with Jay-Z and countless other celebrities. The upward triangle brings in, invokes, and the downward triangle projects and evokes. Now, there is Donald Trump's staff with the downward triangles. They look a lot like the Impractical Jokers. Look at that picture. Now, Donald Trump goes overboard mocking his critics, as did Aleister Crowley. Crowley's intros to his books would mock people, and he would say, his critics, I could care less what you think. You're the mindless one, basically. You're the one that can't think, that can't comprehend what's going on. And I'll tell you like this. Crowley was in Russia for the rise of Stalin. He was in Italy for the rise of Mussolini. He was in Germany for the rise of Hitler, and he is rumored to help Winston Churchill and the Allies defeat Hitler in World War II. With the V for victory sign. That's the peace sign that you see. And you saw throughout the 1960s into the early 1970s that they had that peace sign going on with the two fingers. Crowley was believed to tell Churchill that every time in public when he and other allies are photographed, to make the V for victory sign, because Hitler's black magic was so powerful. This was the only way to defeat him, with the V for victory sign. I received a message many years ago on YouTube that said, "You know nothing about this life until you read Aleister Crowley's book of Magic and Theory and Practice." And today I agree with that statement. Crowley's books are what he is most known for and how I know him. Here are some examples of things you'll find in his books. Now, the Book of Thoth, he talks about high priest of the Vatican running satanic occults. That's in the first couple pages. In Equinox 1, he describes the 5 and 68-degree ritual where a level 3 Freemason loses their soul to the devil. They dress up like the Statue of Liberty, get around it, then they end up in a coffin and they lose their soul to the devil. In Magic Part 4, Crowley breaks down nursery rhymes and explains how they are prayers to Lucifer, and the words have symbolic meanings. That's in Magic Part 4. It's amazing. Jack and Jill, all those different nursery rhymes. Now, the Druids are his people, and he was the source behind the writings of the Book of Wiccans. He says, all teachers of Christianity in his books are his people. All doctors are his people. All scientists are his people. All psychiatrists are his people. Crowley also said that he lived before this life. He said he was reincarnated. After he graduated college, he went to France. Crowley's first visit to France, he said when he got there, he knew the streets because he remembered them. Crowley calls this magical memory called the river, like in the song Tom Sawyer by Rush, the river. Well, what he's talking about is the memory, the magical memory. Crowley said that he was Eliphas Levi in his previous life. Eliphas Levi was a Masonic lodge leader and a Satanist in his life. Crowley, in his books, would have lists of books for his students to read, and his books were either his or Eliphas Levi. There is a conspiracy with Donald Trump called the Last President Conspiracy. And it was going around when Trump began to run for president. A novel wrote in the 1880s called the Baron Trump novels. Now, Baron Trump, it's actually, he spells it Baron, Barron, Trump today, but back then it was Baron, spelled correctly, Baron, Trump. Well, his son has the same name. In the book, it says the last president lived on Fifth Avenue in New York City. Lo and behold, Donald Trump lived on Fifth Avenue in New York City. There are a bunch of similarities between that book and Donald Trump and his son, and also with Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler. There are a bunch of similarities. I went through it in another video. The Bible says we are in a world of witches. You'll never hear that from someone like Joel Osteen, but he talks about the position at work or the new car or the bigger house, but yet that's not in the Bible. His followers are completely distorted and will be in the lowest chambers of hell, punished for disobeying God's law. They hold up and wave those Bibles, but they refuse to read it. They go to church, not for God, but for other reasons. So they are blinded. They don't see. If you look on the post on what they write on YouTube, they'll be like, God, where is my I demand it now? It's like, yeah, okay. You better read Leviticus or the Bible before you start saying things like that. So yes, we are in a world of witches, and those 13 beasts that Crowley invoked during the Avermelon ceremony could be the witches that are multiplied. I showed in a previous video David Bowie speaking about himself after he was dead and given great praise to himself. I also showed in another video about Ben Carson talking about Hillary Clinton and said that she gave great praise to Saul Alinsky. And I compared and showed you how the two look very much identical, being the same being. Well, here is my last one, and I'll show you other pictures too. But again, about the cross, you see it on ancient Egyptians. When you see the ancient Egyptian gods and how they're depicted, they're always having a cross, but their cross has a ring on the top, and it represents rebirth. It's eternal life. Well, that sounds good, right? Well, it means eternal life in hell. And again, if you're not a Rosicrucian or know what it means, do not wear the cross. It's Luciferianism, or the ancient name is Valentinianism for Valentine's Day. There are two ancient religions, Sethianism and Valentinianism. They're the two world's oldest religions. Seth is God the Father, and Valentinianism is to serve the gods that serve God the Father. Okay, so that's Luciferianism. And Sethianism, again, is the Father. Valentinianism, to serve the gods, to serve the Father. And so you're putting another before God. That's violating the first commandment. So if you go to church at St. Jude's, you are attending St. Jude's altar, not your altar. Jesus warns this is the worst error in the Gospel of Judas. And I assure you, there's a reason why the church bans the Gospel of Judas. Okay, because it's direct and it's the truth. I do a reading on it. Look for my video. The Jews are the jinn in the Quran, and the Vestavitas and the Vedas, souls of fire. They want you to go to hell and take you with them forever. Know this. Jews, as I explained through the many videos, Jews are Judeans. They are the original inhabitants of the land. We are the trespassers. So forgive us for our trespasses. All right, here is the last image that I'm going to show you. This is, or not the last image that I'm going to show you, but the last image that I'm going to talk about. Here is Alan Moore, the creator of Batman on the left. He is on YouTube today teaching magic. He teaches black magic. You can watch one of his videos right now. To the right is WWE superstar Daniel Bryan. Notice they look very much alike. Now, Alan Moore was interviewed by the New York Times. His interview was all about him giving praise to the ancient magician Merlin, the medieval magician. Today, most people think that Merlin was a myth, but yet many people offer evidence in books claiming that he really existed. I thought Merlin was a myth too until I read Crowley's book stating that both Merlin and King Arthur are real. And he had it on a list that included Hollywood actors, prominent people, and gods in this book. So, what you're looking at here is the magician Merlin. This is him today. Thelema 93. This is how Aleister Crowley went from the Abbey house in Sicily in 1923 to the White House today.